Hello everybody and welcome back to the Mauve Coaching Podcast, where we discuss all things health and fitness, emotional and mental health, career chats, travelling, just life in general, to be honest, the good, the bad, the ugly and everything in between. So this is episode 2 and today I'll be talking to you about my personal health and fitness journey, which has been a whirlwind, as they tend to be because they're ever changing, far from constant, far from linear, and I was going to say I wouldn't have it any other way because it got me to where I am today, but I probably would have it another way because there's a couple of major life lessons that I've taken away from it that I want to impart with you guys, and it's a massive part of why I became a coach myself, as I want to help my fellow females essentially eradicate some of these minor blips in their journeys that they don't have to go through because of lack of knowledge or experience that I had when I first started. And essentially now that I have all these years of wisdom and also education behind me, I can help you guys not repeat the mistakes that I did, or hopefully not even go through some of the things that I did, because to be honest, some of the things I'm going to be talking to you guys about today are quite heavy and I don't know if I'm ready. I thought this was going to be easing me in because initially the plan was to talk to you guys about my personal mental health and emotional well-being journey. However, I thought I threw myself in the deep end last week. I needed to kind of, I'm all about throwing myself in the deep end lately, as we all know, right? I literally just drove here on a Scoopy bike, which was terrifying because I went on the shortcut, which to anyone who's ever been to Bali won't have any idea what that means, but it's just chaos. And I had no helmet, sorry mom, but basically it broke. But I did that threw myself in the deep end today in some shape or form. Didn't want to necessarily have myself in a state again today, crying on camera, because as I said, my emotional and mental health journey will be something I want to discuss, but just don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready. Maybe next week I'll be ready, because honestly, things change very quickly in my world. But today I'll be talking to you about my personal health and fitness journey, which obviously touches on aspects of my journey with mental and emotional well-being. However, it's more about how I got into the gym and what my reasoning was for it. My journey with it, as I said, was far from linear, and kind of just nuggets of wisdom that I want to share with you guys along the way. So let's get started. Woo! Let's go back to the beginning. Okay, so firstly, I'm going to walk you through what kind of triggered this whole journey for me to begin with. And putting aside my history in sports, because, I was a very sporty kid growing up, I'm going to be primarily talking about my journey with the gym and weightlifting, because that was the game changer for me. As I said, was always a very sporty kid, still am a very sporty adult, I guess you could say. I was always drawn to sports, particularly tennis, played since I was 5, pretty much every single day, especially in the summer times. I didn't have a social life when I was a kid. No, that's a lie. Tennis club was where the party was at, honestly. Every single day we'd go down and play for literally hours on end. Such a good hobby or pastime to have. It keeps you out of trouble. Also played cricket and a bit of golf, dabbled a bit, but a very good swing, so I'm told. I'm also I'm quite sporty, I'm good at sports, but I think from the pressure that I felt to be, as I said before in the last podcast, a perfectionist, I grew to resent them a little bit. And this is actually something I wasn't planning on talking about, as you can tell. I was actually going to just throw myself right in talking about the gym stuff. But yeah, I always had sport in my life. It was my favorite thing. And tennis in particular, my go-to of sports. As I said, I played every single day. Loved my tennis coach, still do. He's someone I really look up to. He's very passionate about what he does. And he was probably a huge reason that I loved it so much, because he made it so fun while also creating an insane skill, because I was very good at it. But what happened with me in that journey, kind of touching back on last week's episode, I, as I said, a perfectionist, approached it as I got older in a way that was far more about achieving and less so about enjoying it, which is why I primarily did it to begin with. And that happened with cricket too, less so with golf because I was never as infatuated with it, but with tennis and cricket, I don't know if that's actually also probably a shocker to a lot of you that I played cricket. I was a bowler. But yeah, definitely not a good batsman. Really, really liked it, but then I just started getting on all these like squads, and I think the constant pressure, whether explicit or in my head, I felt to be the best and, you know, to keep achieving and, you know, progress my way up to potentially the Irish team someday. I just really grew to resent it. Like, I remember dreading like no tomorrow, especially during my junior cert and my leaving cert when I was already stressed to bits. And because I was a perfectionist, if I wasn't performing well, I'd be really, 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 really hard on myself. And it just got into my head. So I really did fall out of love with those sports. Always kind of ebb and flow when it comes to tennis, especially in recent years when I've kind of become more aware of these tendencies. I've brought it back into my life as a way to like have fun, reconnect with my inner child, because it was literally something I did when I was a kid, while also being good at it, but not being like, I'm not playing it to like beat you. Well, I probably still want to beat you because I'm competitive as hell. But yeah, like it's something that will always be there in my life and I'll always come back to. And I'll always have that skill. Like honestly, the first like few hits, you're like, jeepers creepers, have I ever played tennis in my life? And then like half an hour in, like I'm flying. And as I said, that kind of correlates with when things start to go awry with what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. So that's kind of a good preliminary intro into my sportiness and how I've always had a natural inclination to be moving my body. My relationship with that changing with time, as you'll see when I discuss my personal health and fitness journey. So picking up where I left off there. So when I was roughly, let's say, transition year, so it was around 16 going on 17, this is when I really started to like put my head down in school. Like I really wanted to do well on my leaving cert. I put all this massive pressure on myself, as I've said before, and also was performing at a high level when it came to sports too. So everything in my life was all about achieve. And due to that, no doubt, as well as also due to a traumatic event in my life that I don't want to talk about because, not that I haven't processed it, I have. I just don't want to make this podcast about that particularly because it's a lot of detail into my personal life. And I'm already sharing so much as well. So I kind of want to ease you guys in, ease myself in. And there's no real need to essentially discuss what happened. It's more about that something traumatic happened to me. And my trauma response is control. And I think around that time I was kind of becoming increasingly aware that that was the case because I was noticing like when I got stressed in school, I still to this day, whenever I am feeling a little bit on the nervy, stressy end, I do try to control things. I'm like, okay, what can I control? To-do list. What can I get done to alleviate said pressure and stress? However, that's not to knock that strategy because it kind of makes logical sense. It's like, this is stressing me out. How can I fix it? Problem, solution, boom. However, it's when you take it too far the extreme that it's a coping mechanism and a maladaptive one at that. So in my case, and this is the hard part that I said at the beginning, something that it's going to be hard for me to talk about, and also something I didn't realize I was subconsciously not talking about. I was chatting to my friend about it a few weeks ago, and I just realized, I was like, I haven't opened up about this really. So here we go. So basically, not unlike many young boys and girls, and emphasis on boys and girls, not just girls, I had an eating disorder. And that was triggered by the traumatic event that I'm not getting into today, because it's kind of slightly irrelevant to the topic at hand. So my traumatic event of sorts when I was 16, 17 manifested in an eating disorder because of my control trauma response. And for me, I obviously didn't know it at the time, but my sense of self-worth was rock bottom. And essentially I was trying to prove to a certain individual that I was worthy. And to myself, I was trying to prove to myself that I was good enough. And I thought that there was something inherently wrong with me that caused this event, that I wasn't good enough. So I was like, okay. And I was always, just to preface this, I was always naturally a very small girl, like metabolism like no tomorrow. And it's a blessing and a freaking curse. I'll get into that as we go on. But for me, I was always tiny. And that was back in the day when that was glorified anyway. And I still didn't think I was small enough. And this was kind of around the era of the thigh gap. Oh, to this day, like, irks me that was a thing. It's freaking to do with your bone structure. Anyway, I became obsessed with thigh gap. And the reason I haven't discussed this as well was because of my perception of it not being severe enough to be deemed something that I could talk about and, you know, have an opinion on. And like, even saying that out loud sounds ridiculous. Like, it was a personally traumatic experience of mine. As I said, a lot of boys and girls, men and women, go through them to this day. And don't get me wrong, there can be cases that are more severe than others. But because I wasn't hospitalized, I completely disregarded or downplayed its severity because, as I said, I wasn't hospitalized. So I was like, no, it's not really something that I need to talk about. But it is. And I think a lot of people, more people will have situations like mine that are like, on the surface, maybe people might know straight away that there's an eating disorder. And it's not about how you look. An eating disorder is about your relationship with food and with yourself. It is like, you could have an eating disorder and be underweight and overweight. Like, you can't tell by looking at someone if they have an eating disorder, and that should never be the gauge or the measure of it. And I think that's why that kind of corrupted mindset of society, that's what, like, how to view eating disorders and the severity of someone's, has kind of held me back from talking about this. And I am stopping that today. So I'm going to talk about it now. So what I kind of suffered with, see, I'm already doing it there. I suffered with orthorexia. This particular eating disorder is, at least in my personal experience, it can vary, I'm sure, from individual to individual. But for me, what it meant was that I became very exclusionary in my diet. So anyone who knows me from my younger life, I was the official pasta queen. Like, every day, at least once a day. I would have it for lunch and dinner if I could. I wouldn't have breakfast now because I do love my brekkie and I love my sweet things like chocolate, protein pancakes, all that jazz. But I would have it for lunch and dinner without blinking twice. Loved it. I literally had plain frickin' pasta with parmesan. No butter, no oil, nothing. And you can probably tell from that I was a very picky eater growing up. However, when I had this eating disorder, I went from a girl who ate carbs like no tomorrow. Keeping in mind, I am genetically predisposed to metabolizing carbs quite well, so that's why I was very lean. I went from a girl who ate carbs every single day. I'd say it was more than 60. I'd say it was 65 at least % of my overall calorific intake on a daily basis growing up. And I went from that to completely slashing it from my food intake entirely and started only eating like more fatty foods, which I didn't really I was looking back on it, realize. So when I say fatty, I mean like nuts, seeds, like good fats. And which is bizarre. Like, that's what I mean. There was no rhyme of reason to what I was doing. It was purely a control trauma response. I didn't have any education on nutrition clearly. I didn't really have any end goal. I just wanted to control, and I didn't know how else to do that. I obviously lost a lot of weight, not so much so that I was in the position that I had to be hospitalized. However, I was extremely unhealthy across all metrics. We're talking, didn't get my period until I was 18. I actually had to go on a contraceptive pill purely with the intention, like I was only 17, purely with the intention of trying to trigger a fake period and hopefully put on a little bit of weight, because I know there's no direct studies are still exploring this about the correlation between the contraceptive pill and gaining weight. But in my case, I did gain weight. I'm not sure if that was because of increased appetite. It worked for me, but I got my first real period only, I think, last year when I came off the pill for the first time in years, because I was so terrified of change, even though I hated how I was on the pill. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. So yeah, my orthorexia kind of spanned the years of 5th going into 6th year. And keeping in mind that I was in boarding school, so I got away with it a little bit more than I would have had I been in a family home situation. Obviously, the moment that my mother saw me, she knew that there was something up, or like when I was at home on the weekends, like she'd see my disordered eating patterns very much come to light. It was definitely a control thing because I was being so exclusionary. I also demonized a lot of foods. I demonized carbs, simple carbs, but then I would glorify complex carbs because of my basic nutrition knowledge at the time. I was just like, good, bad, there's no in between. So even to this day, like I can't really eat sweet potato, for example, because that was something that I rinsed out of it. Like I just had them every day because that was like a carbohydrate that I deemed like healthy. So I only would eat healthified foods. So even that would span through to desserts too. And I have it in one of my meal plans this week. And I actually was saying to my friend, like, it was kind of triggering eating it because it was like cooked in the way that I would have cooked it when I had my eating issue. And yeah, it's just weird. Like it's hard to kind of like, I think a lot of girls that I've been chatting to recently over here have been saying the same, like certain foods for them trigger a time in their life when they had either disordered eating patterns or eating disorder full stop. And I would only eat like, I went through like a phase where I would make all my desserts because I still had a sweet tooth. So I was like, I still wanted my chocolate, but I would only eat certain types of desserts and chocolate. So it was only chocolate that was like 85% plus. Like I think at one point I tried 99% cacao. Disgusting. It's just like powder. And I would make all my like treats. So I went through probably like 5-6 food processors because of the amount of nuts I was trying to like process in like a non-industrial food processor. Disastrous for my mum because I just absolutely went through all of her like utensils. Like I felt so bad. But I would make like all my brownies healthified and make them with sweet potato or avocados, like protein balls. They'd all have to be like healthified. And obviously, don't get me wrong, like to this day, like I still kind of like those things and I kind of still do have a palate for them because of that. But as I'll talk about now, my relationship with food, it's one of freedom. And that's very empowering for me, having gone through that. And I'm sure for other people who have gone through similar situations, getting to that point, it's just like a point that you sometimes don't think you'll ever get to, and it is possible. But just to touch on my food journey a little bit more, because it's quite a tumultuous one, I then went into a situation where I was still stressed to bits in college, as you'd imagine. Nothing changed because nothing changed. I didn't change my approach. Because of that, and because of probably not being 100% healed to do with food, I went through a binge restrict cycle for first year. I'm actually going to say for most of my college years up until I went away. Up until 3rd year of college, so 3 years kind of binge restrict. I was like eating nothing all morning. So for someone who loves their brekkie, I look back with sadness that I missed so many nice breakfasts. But I didn't eat breakfast, and then I would basically unknowingly or knowingly, can't really tell you because I can't remember those years of my life, block them out. Memory loss is real. But I didn't eat until, I'm going to say like around dinner time, and then I'd have a big, I was going to swear, F off Domino's most of the time. This is actually interestingly when I became a vegetarian, because I wasn't eating, I shouldn't say interestingly, because it's, can you tell, like I'm trying to deal with this difficult topic in a lighthearted manner because I don't want to cry today. But I kind of dealt with that negative and toxic relationship I had with food and with myself by progressing into potentially undiagnosed binge restrict cycle. And because I was on a budget, I wasn't really buying meat, and then I accidentally became vegetarian. And to be fair, I haven't looked back since. I have been vegetarian ever since, but now, like, the danger in people thinking that if you become a vegetarian, you're automatically healthier. No, that is not true at all. Like, I can't even say, I'm going to say up until the last two years, have I only now become healthy vegetarian. And I actually introduced fish into my diet around that time frame too, so I'm actually pescatarian. Because of just the incredible protein source, omega-3s. It's just, I need it in my diet personally. I could probably supplement as well, but I actually like the taste of it as well. And the reason that I didn't eat meat was both because of budget reasons when I was in college, and I didn't like meat, like red meat, nope. Chicken, boring. I could just have corn, corn with a Q, or tofu, and more recently tempeh. So yeah, I went through that binge restrict cycle and went away on my year abroad and was traveling. I wasn't really taking much care for my nutrition, but I definitely improved my relationship with food then, in the sense that I was eating whatever I wanted, but probably went too far the other extreme where I wasn't really looking at the nutrient levels of my food, which, depending on what your goals are in life, isn't always a bad thing. However, some degree of awareness of what you're eating and putting into your body, I think, should always be there for everyone, no matter what. If you have a goal physique-wise or not, like, it's about fueling your body. Like, it's typical saying is like, your body is your temple, treat it like that. So like micronutrients, macronutrients, even just for basic functioning, like let alone physique goals. So yeah, I definitely had food freedom then, but it wasn't healthy food freedom. And now that I'm in a position where I've educated myself on all things nutrition, especially even from the lens of like gut health, and I've improved my own gut health, I have a far more healthier relationship with food while still having food freedom. Like, I will not hold back on, I was going to say a cheat meal, but I don't like that term, a treat meal, because I like food. I like to enjoy food. I like to enjoy food with company. Like, it's a part of life. So I have food freedom while also making sure that I fuel my body. And it's such an empowering position to finally have arrived at. And let me tell you, clearly that was not a linear journey, and it wasn't an easy one. And I don't think it is for anyone. I think it's something that you have to actively work on every day and actively decide for your higher self's purpose to fuel your body, but to do so without a massive fixation. And it's a very hard balance to strike. Even just now, for example, this week, having a meal plan for me has been kind of triggering, because I'm like, okay, great, I'm getting my protein, getting all my macros, but I really want to eat out, and now I feel restricted that I can't eat out. It's a weird one. Like, it's constantly ever changing, and there's always going to be challenges thrown your way. Like I said, just the other day, I had sweet potato, and it kind of brought me back to that place. So it's a hard one. It's one to navigate on a daily basis, and to be compassionate towards yourself. I finally got to that point now where I'm healthy from the inside out. Like, I also used to never eat feckin' vegetables. Eat your vegetables. Eat your goddamn vegetables, okay? Because, oh my God, I still struggle. I'm not gonna lie. Not always gonna be enjoyable. Not every part of your meal will be enjoyable. That's not to say you should force feed yourself. However, there is a time and a place for food for fuel and food for enjoyment. They can be both. Amazing if they are. For me, vegetables will never really be something that gets me out of bed in the morning, okay? I eat it for my health. I eat it for my wellness. I eat it for my higher self's sake, okay? That's just part of it. It has to be done. Now, I've never really had an issue with fruit, probably because the fact it's quite sugary and I like sweet things. But vegetables, it's just always been a texture thing for me. Like, it's just, yeah, it has to be done. We're adults now. We got to eat our goddamn vegetables. I'm not going to say it again. That kind of brings us naturally to my training history and my relationship with the gym aspect of health and fitness and how I got started. So basically, my eating disorder, my control trauma response ignited and set me off on this dangerous path with food. And getting through that, for me, a huge part, like I don't know where I'd be today without it, was the gym. And I got into the gym initially as a way to kind of cope with the physical changes that I'd have to be experiencing. Like, I was getting bigger, putting on more weight because recovering from an eating disorder, your metabolism tends to have taken a hit because of your starvation state for prolonged periods of time. And that was something that I'd never really experienced before. Like, I never really struggled with weight gain, as I said before, very fast metabolism. So for me, getting into the gym was a way to kind of, at least initially, that's why I got into it, was a way to cope with those changes. And then I started just falling in love with weightlifting and the feeling I got from it, and like feeling strong, mentally strong, physically strong. It's just, the feeling of it is unmatched. However, I will say that when I started, I definitely didn't know what I was doing. It then very quickly progressed into, I want to feel strong. I want to, like, this is my thing now. So I got really, really into it, but I had no structure, didn't know what I was doing, following Instagram workouts. They didn't know what they were doing most of the time, not qualified coaches, especially back then. Most of the time it was just people just documenting their own workouts, people saving them as if they were gospel, even though most of the time they didn't know what they were doing. And I wasn't really seeing results because of that. Like, there was no structure, there was no program, there was no rhyme or reason to what I was doing. I was just doing it for a release. It was more of a safe space for me, if I'm being honest, as a way to decompress, decompartmentalize, like, how I was feeling. And this is when I was going through my leaving cert, so it kind of makes sense. So it was a place for me to go to escape and to numb my feelings, disconnect essentially, which isn't necessarily something I'd advise, but it got me through that dark period. Essentially from there, around when I got into the college years, around second year into like third year and a little bit into fourth year even, I'd say, I was training with the intention to get a desirable body, that being one deemed desirable by society. So that means, in layman's terms, a fat ass, because your girl is not blessed with those genetics, okay? She's blessed with other things, that's for sure, but I am not blessed with a booty, naturally. Have to work my literal butt off to get one. And so that was like my focus. I wanted to get like a bum, I wanted to be womanly. I was training and going to the gym and trying to achieve all these physique goals with the sole intention of external validation, of feeling worthy, of feeling accepted, of feeling desired, desirable at least. And no one should ever, at least in my opinion, I'm sure I share this with other people, train or work out or try to look a certain way for the sake of someone else. It should always be for yourself. Like, why would that ever? It's a never-ending cycle. You'll just be chasing your own tail for years on end, thinking that that's the way to feel worthy, to feel enough. It always starts inside, and that's something that I had to learn the hard way. So a journey of self-love has been embarked on, that's for sure. That's where this, don't know if you're going to be able to see this, that's where this tattoo comes from, or why I got it. I literally got it earlier this year beside my ring finger, so that whoever I marry, I only marry them when I loved myself first. So that's why I got it there, and that's why it's a little line heart. And it's the only tattoo I have. But that was when I think I realized that I would always just be, not even just to do with my physique, just in life in general, I'd always be chasing my own tail, never feeling happy, fulfilled by life, until I realized that I needed to start looking inwards. self-love, like, is a massive one for me that I need to work on and still work on. So yeah, just when it comes to physique goals and looking a certain way, ladies and gentlemen, don't do it for other people. It's meaningless. You will feel so unfulfilled. And the only way for you to feel confident in your body, like I feel confident in my body now, and I've done anything that I've done this year had I not worked on myself. So definitely make your goals far more intrinsic to you as opposed to external. That's my one piece of wisdom in that regard. Kind of segueing from that, I kind of went off topic a tad, is that I then went through, like everyone, a lull, and that's kind of putting it lightly, during COVID lockdown 2020. We all blacked that out, didn't we? For like 2 years, like I just had no motivation, which is something I never used to rely on. I only ever needed to rely on my discipline, but because the gyms were all closed, I was physically and mentally burnt out from years and years and years of being a prolonged, hyper-vigilant, stressed out state, adrenaline, cortisol pumping through my body, literally burnt out. I think that I was, although undiagnosed, I think I was depressed, as I'm sure a lot of people can probably relate to, because we had like no human contact. We weren't able to go to the gym. We were barely allowed out for a walk. Like, these are all things that take a toll on you mentally and physically. So I definitely felt the most undisciplined and unmotivated that I've ever felt in terms of the gym and eating. And I was really struggling with like finding meaning in it, because I was like, there's no point. We're all living in this like awful toxic loop. What's going on? Kind of just reached rock bottom mentally, and definitely took its toll on me and my relationship with health and fitness. But like I said, it's an ever-changing journey, ebbs and flows. And since then, the last, I'm going to say year, definitely since January, February at least, got my ass into gear, knew something had to change, had a goal in the sense that I was coming to Bali for a holiday initially. And it wasn't necessarily a physique goal, it was more so like I had something to work towards. Like, I didn't change my eating habits in the sense that I didn't restrict, I didn't cut, just ate well and trained hard. And since then, give or take a few weeks earlier this year, when I was going through a harder period in my life, I have been so disciplined, so structured, have goals, feel great inside and out, like strong mentally and physically, like seeing the results, seeing the gains a little bit later than I'd like in life, but we got to this point eventually, and it's all that experience that will stand to me to this day, and I'll be able to help other fellow females on their own journeys and help eradicate those roadblocks, obstacles, because I've experienced it, because I know what it's like. It's not linear, and essentially that's why I became a coach. So because of my personal journey with health and fitness, both in the nutrition and training aspects, I want to help my fellow females essentially improve their relationship with food, fall in love with moving their bodies, and essentially eradicate, or at least manage better, these little like voices in our head, or these roadblocks, external or internal, whatever they may be, that stop you from getting to a point where you're happy with yourself, both mentally, physically, emotionally. So that's why I do what I do, and that's what motivated me to leave the corporate life, because I finally found the meaning in my day-to-day life that I've always yearned for. Because, not gonna knock it, it's just not something that I personally found to be meaningful. But like, when I was working with the sole intention of improving a company's bottom line, I'd never felt more like meaningless, essentially. I didn't feel like I was doing anything. And don't get me wrong, it has to be done. Like, that's how our world works. Capitalism works this way. However, it's not something that I found meaning in. And I do find meaning in helping other people in something that I've personally been through. And I've never been happier since making this decision to help my fellow females on their own personal journeys to get to a point where they're happy in their lives overall, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So I actually put up a poll last night that I was doing the topic on my personal health and fitness journey. So I got a few questions that I want to answer. I'm going to make a little Q&A segment, I think. I don't know. I like the idea of it. I like, whenever I listen to a podcast, I like this. So hopefully you guys like it too. I asked you guys of any questions you want answered on my journey with training and nutrition. So let's go to the beginning. I'll just do a few. First up, was there anything that was hard to let go of? A belief, mindset, people, anything? So yes to all. Control was really hard to let go of, like really, really, really fucking hard. But it's still a part of who I am. I just manage it better. You know, it's not going to change. Like it's very much ingrained in me, whether or not it's a personality trait or a trauma response. Who the heck knows? It's very much a part of who I am, and I just manage it better now, and I'm self-aware of it now. But letting go of that control a little bit when it came to food was very triggering for me, and I got to a point like I am today where it does not really faze me. So it is possible, but I had to let go of it. A belief, I guess, would be that you have to restrict, you have to exclude. There's extremes, you know, and it's bizarre now even saying that out loud because that's so unlike me personally and for my coaching, because my lifestyle now, the last few years, has been the complete opposite of restrictive or extreme. It's very much a lifestyle, sustainable. So I had to let go of that belief, which was a very much happy goodbye. I was like, see you feckin' later. Why would I want extreme when I could have balanced and sustainable? You know, like, feck that. It also doesn't work and it's severely unhealthy. Mindset. Yeah, mindset, growth mindset. I had to, especially in the last year, adopt more of a growth mindset, positive one, because I very much got to a point in my life where I was like, nothing's going to change, all doom and gloom, like very much, I don't want to say miserable, but I was. And you have to kind of go through essentially something similar to what I went through this year and before that and everything in the lead up to it, to get to a point where you're like, no, I am sick of dwelling in this toxic negativity. Positive growth mindset, here on, here out. And honestly, never look back. People, less so people, I'd say I had to get rid of, more so that I had to establish boundaries with. So let's talk about it from the perspective of my eating disorder. There were people and are people that I still have in my life that I just had to establish boundaries with because they were triggering points for me, or their remarks would be triggering. And especially when I got more of like a womanly figure and was recovering from my eating disorder, I had a few issues with certain individuals in my life that I really, really, really struggled to navigate because I valued their opinion so much. And I really struggled to differentiate between what they were saying and reality and my choice and my decision-making power as an adult. So I think for me, it's less so that I have to let go of people because sometimes it's not always possible. Sometimes you shouldn't always, you know, just cut people out. Sometimes it is all you need is to have boundaries and establish them hard and stick by them hard, like non-negotiable. Because if someone's triggering you, like even if it's a close friend or family member, you just have to say it. And they mightn't be happy with hearing it because they don't really know enough about it to understand their role and how they're triggering it, or they're not self-aware enough to understand they're projecting on you. Sometimes that's the case. A lot of the times that's the case. So you just have to set the boundary, tell them take it or leave it. Because it's your life. You're an adult. You can have boundaries. You should have boundaries. Did I have anyone who helped or guided me on my journey? Yes, I did. I think everyone does. I think everyone has a person in their life who you look back and you can't imagine how your life would look had they not come into it. And it's a weird one to talk about, but I'm just going to touch on it. But that would actually be my ex-boyfriend in my case. He came into my life at a time when my relationship with my food and training was all over the place. Like I was traveling Australia. So we met around 2019, at least. That's when he came into my life. Not physically, we were very much on other sides of the planet. But yeah, he came into my life when I was really not taking care of myself. Like he sent me over multivitamins to like make sure that I was eating, or at least getting the right macros in, even if I wasn't eating well, because I told him what I was eating and he had like a panic attack. When we then started seeing each other, he really, in a roundabout way, because it took time for me to start taking initiative for myself and taking care of myself. But he, for a lot of our relationship, made me understand the importance of fueling my body. And like, he helped me kind of overcome a roadblock that I had with food, because I was quite picky, had a lot of food phobias, anxieties about food, and to try new things and to eat to fuel my body, not just for enjoyment, because I used to just eat for enjoyment. Like, it was just about like, if I liked the taste and the texture of it, it wouldn't be about the nutritional value. So he helped me kind of look at food as fuel, as opposed to just eating, like nearly as a coping mechanism, which I don't think I really realized until looking back on it, that I was just eating whenever I'd want to like numb negative feelings and stuff. So yeah, he definitely inspired me and guided me on my own nutrition journey, and definitely helped me accelerate my own journey with training and getting better at it, essentially. And yeah, so I don't know, honestly, it's a bit weird to look back and think you don't know how different your life would look had a certain individual not helped you or guided you in a certain way. So it's something I'm extremely grateful for to this day. And nutrition in Ireland versus Bali, pros, cons, which do you prefer for your body and health? So that's the last one I'm actually going to answer, just because my voice is going and we're running out of time. But nutrition in Bali has been an absolute minefield. So I'm vegetarian, and because of that, struggled a lot, especially when I was first here, to get my protein in. I discovered tempeh, which is the Indonesian like native food, and it's incredible. It's so good for your gut because of the probiotics, as well as the fact that the protein per gram content, to die for. So yeah, like I've definitely gotten better with it as time goes on, as I'm like learning to live here as opposed to traveling. I have a meal plan this week, for example, just trying to help myself get some structure and like eat out less, because I got really sick of just eating out all the time because it's so cheap. It's actually not that cheap anymore as well. I do miss cooking, because I kind of got into the groove of cooking when I was back in Ireland, and I really miss my like brekkies and my lunches, like a lot actually. So I miss my overnight oats because they were whopper. Like back in Ireland, I just haven't got around to getting protein powder over here, because their version of Amazon called Tokopedia, it's like a minefield to navigate because it's all in Indonesian. So that's something I'm going to get my ass into gear on, because I really miss my brekkies. I'm such a breakfast person. And my lunches, so I used to have like this top tier, in my opinion, lunch like midweek mainly, where it was, when I was working from home, it was 4 eggs, poached, fried lightly, whatever it may be, whatever your style is, preference. 3 pieces of sourdough, baked beans, taste, protein. I think my nutrition's actually been better in terms of like from a protein standpoint, because I don't necessarily track my calories, I just track my protein just to make sure that I'm hitting that as my one non-negotiable, and usually I never struggle with carbs. Fats I do need to be a little bit more wary of, because I'm not as inclined to eat high fatty foods, but good or bad. But I think my nutrition actually probably overall probably better over here. It's just been more of an effort, because I'm not at home. I don't have the luxuries of opening a fridge and having loads of options. I literally just have to plan each meal, which I think that's why it's probably better, because I have to think, what am I going to have for breakfast? What am I going to have for lunch, dinner, and my 2 little snacks in between, usually protein shakes because they're tasty. So yeah, that's my experience of nutrition in Bali. Because I'm living here, I've had to adapt, and I've had to like find long-term sustainable solutions. So right now I'm opting into this like meal plan service, because it's somewhat like affordable, and I get all my macros for at least 2 meals in my day, because then I eat out for usually dinner with the girls. We go out for like a nasi goreng, which is a really, really nice Indonesian local cuisine. If you've not had it, it's unreal. Anyway, that is all from me today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the pod number 2. I will be back with more, no doubt. And if you have any questions or topics that you want me to chat on, feel free just to slide into the DMs. They're always open. But yeah, that's all from me. Bye.